Welcome to Life Stories, where we share the most inspiring and heartfelt journeys of resilience, love, and transformation. Today's story is about Uma, a woman who faced betrayal, loss, and heartbreak but found the strength to rebuild her life and protect her children. Despite the overwhelming challenges, she fought not only for herself but for her family, proving that no matter the pain, there is always a way forward. Join us as we explore Uma's incredible journey of healing, forgiveness, and starting anew. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel to start the story today. The hospital room was quiet except for the soft hum of the machines and the gentle, rhythmic sound of my heartbeat in the background. I cradled the twins in my arms, my hands trembling slightly as I gazed at their delicate, serene faces. The stillness of their sleep felt like a balm to my soul, offering a sense of calm in the midst of everything that had happened in the past hours. Their pale skin, their tiny faces, their soft features, all so innocent, so beautiful. I couldn't have asked for a better gift from life. And yet, as I sat there, a heavy dread gnawed at me, an unsettling sense of fear I couldn't shake. The joy I had hoped to feel was overshadowed by a growing sense of dread. I could already see the shock on Ethan's face when he stormed into the room, his steps heavy and hurried as he rushed towards us. His eyes locked on the twins, darting between them and me, wide with disbelief, confusion, and anger. "What is this?" he bellowed, his voice sharp, echoing off the sterile walls of the hospital room. For a moment, I couldn't respond. His gaze was piercing, accusatory, and it left me feeling small, vulnerable. How could I explain this? How could I defend what was right in front of him? How could I make him see what I saw, two beautiful, innocent lives? Our lives. His words stung as they rang out in the room. Are these supposed to be my children? I blinked back, tears, my exhaustion from childbirth washing over me, making it hard to speak. I had just gone through the most intense experience of my life. But still, this wasn't supposed to be the moment I had to defend the truth of my love, my commitment to him. My voice trembled as I tried to calm him. "Ethan, of course. They're ours," I whispered, the weight of my words sinking deep into my chest. "Look at them, they're beautiful." Ethan's expression darkened, and I felt a wave of coldness radiate from him as he stepped closer. He pointed at the twins with his finger, his voice full of accusation. "Beautiful? Uma, these children are white, their eyes are blue. Tell me, how does a black man like me father twins who look like this? Do you think I'm a fool?" My heart sank in my chest. I hadn't noticed it right away in the rush of labor. But now, under Ethan's scrutiny, the truth was undeniable. Their features were unlike mine, unlike his. I could feel my stomach twist in knots as the weight of his words hung in the air. Desperation rose within me. I reached out to him, hoping that my touch would offer some comfort, some kind of understanding. "I don't know, Ethan," I whispered, the words catching in my throat. "I don't know why they look this way, but they're ours. I swear to you. I've never." But before I could finish, Ethan pulled his hand away from mine, his voice trembling with anger. "Don't lie to me," he roared, his words breaking like a wave against the shore, filled with pain and fury. "You've betrayed me, Uma. Don't even try to deny it." The twins, so sensitive to the emotions around them, began to cry, their soft wails piercing the tension in the room. My chest tightened as I turned to soothe them, my body shaking with the exhaustion of both the physical and emotional toll. But Ethan wasn't finished. His voice became cold, like a blade cutting through the air. "You've made a fool of me," he said, his words low and filled with bitterness. "You've humiliated me. I want nothing to do with you or those children." His words sliced through me, each one more painful than the last. I could barely comprehend what he was saying. It wasn't just the anger in his voice that hurt, but the finality, the decision he had already made. "Chitty, Please. I pleaded. Tears streaming down my face as I reached for him. Desperate to talk. To make him understand. To make him see. Let's talk about this. Let's figure it out together. But Ethan didn't answer. He spun on his heel and stormed out of the room, slamming the door behind him with a force that rattled the walls. The sound echoed through the room and reverberated in my chest, leaving me in stunned silence. I looked down at the twins, their cries slowly subsiding as they nestled against me. I whispered to them, even though I wasn't sure who I was trying to comfort. He'll come back. He just needs time. But the words felt hollow, empty, as if they were a fragile illusion I was trying to cling to. Hours passed, and I continued to sit there in the sterile hospital room, the loneliness settling in around me like a thick fog. Ethan didn't return, and then, just as I had begun to convince myself that he never would, he showed up again. But this time, it wasn't to reconcile. He entered the room with a few bags in his hands, tossing them carelessly at the foot of the bed. He made a cruel display of his anger. His clothes spilled out of the bags, a humiliating mess on the floor. His words came next, each one a hammer hitting me where it hurt the most. You and your things are no longer welcome in my house, he spat. Pack whatever's left and go to whoever fathered those children. They're not mine. Mine. I could feel my world crumbling around me. Chitty. You can't mean this. I gasped. My voice barely a whisper. I've been faithful to you. I don't know why the twins look this way, but I know they're yours. Ethan shook his head, a bitter laugh escaping his lips. Spare me your excuses. Uma. I want a divorce. You've ruined everything. He didn't even look at me as he turned and walked away, leaving me with nothing but the overwhelming silence. The nurses rushed in moments later, their faces full of pity as they tried to console me. But their sympathy didn't reach me. How could it? The man I loved, the father of my children, had just walked out on me in the cruelest way possible. I collapsed into tears, feeling as though my world had ended in an instant. In that moment, I felt utterly lost. The days that followed felt like an endless blur. The overwhelming pain of Ethan's rejection weighed heavily on my heart. But I couldn't afford to let it consume me. The twins needed me. They were still so tiny, so vulnerable. And I had to be their rock. Even though I felt like I was falling apart on the inside, I knew I had no choice but to keep going. I was fortunate to have my mother, Joan, by my side. She stepped into the role of both caretaker and emotional support without hesitation, offering me a sense of stability I so desperately needed. When I was too weak from exhaustion to care for the twins, Joan took over, making sure they were fed and comforted, while I tried to rest. She was a pillar of strength during the days when I thought I might crumble under the weight of it all. Despite my mother's efforts to console me, I couldn't shake the deep ache inside. I kept thinking about the future, about what kind of life I could build for myself and my children after everything had been destroyed. Ethan's betrayal had torn through my life like a storm, leaving nothing but ruin in its wake. But what could I do? Where could I go? It wasn't long before the reality of our financial situation set in. After Ethan left, he emptied our joint bank account, leaving me with nothing. I couldn't even afford the basics for the twins. My hands trembled as I opened the banking app on my phone, dreading what I would find. When I saw the balance zero, my stomach dropped. It was as if the last shred of security I had was taken from me. I called the bank in a panic, but there was nothing they could do. The withdrawal had been authorized by Ethan. Because the account was joint, there was no legal recourse. No way for me to recover the money. I felt helpless. But more than that, I felt utterly betrayed. The money I had saved over the years, the money I had worked so hard for, was now gone, swept away by the very man I had trusted. It was as if Ethan had stripped me of everything, my love, my dignity, and now, my security. I felt small and powerless. But as I stared at the screen, with the twins' soft breathing in the background, I knew I couldn't afford to fall apart completely. I had 2 little lives depending on me, and they were far more important than anything else. With the support of my mother, I began the painful process of rebuilding my life. The first step was finding work. The thought of applying for jobs felt overwhelming. I had been out of the workforce for years, raising my children and supporting Ethan. And now it seemed as if the world had moved on without me. But I couldn't afford to waste time feeling sorry for myself. I had to start somewhere. I applied to dozens of jobs. But with each rejection, my confidence took another hit. Employers seemed hesitant to hire a single mother with no recent work experience. And the rejections only deepened my sense of inadequacy. But I refused to give up. I couldn't. Not when my children needed me. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, I got an offer. A local elementary school was looking for a teaching assistant. The pay wasn't much, but it was something. I accepted the position with gratitude. Even though my heart was still heavy, every morning, I woke up before dawn, fed the twins, and got them ready for the day. Joan took care of them while I was at work. And though it was exhausting, I felt a sense of purpose again. As the days turned into weeks, I began to find my rhythm. The exhaustion didn't feel as overwhelming, though the ache in my heart from Ethan's betrayal never completely disappeared. Slowly but surely, I started to regain a sense of independence. I was no longer relying on Ethan for anything. I was doing it on my own. And though it was hard, it felt empowering. But there were still moments when the pain would surface. Moments when I'd lie awake at night and wonder how everything had gone so wrong. How had I gone from being part of a family, planning a future with Ethan, to being alone, struggling to make ends meet? In those moments, I would think about the twins, their innocent smiles, their soft giggles, the way they looked at me as though I was their whole world, and I realized that I couldn't afford to dwell on the past. I had to keep moving forward. For them. One evening, after a particularly long and exhausting day, my mother and I sat together at the kitchen table, sipping tea. The twins had just gone to sleep, their small bodies curled up in their bassinets. It was in that quiet moment, as I looked across at my mother, that I began to truly understand something I had struggled to accept. "Mom," I said softly, my voice barely above a whisper, "do you think I'll ever get back to the life I had before? Before everything fell apart?" Joan looked at me, her gaze steady, filled with compassion, but also something else, a quiet strength that I hadn't noticed before. She placed her hand on mine and said, "Sometimes life doesn't take us back to where we were, Uma. It takes us to a new place. You've already started rebuilding. You're stronger than you think." Her words stayed with me, echoing in my mind long after the conversation ended. Slowly, with my mother's help, I began to find my footing again. Every small victory, a good day at work, a smile from the twins, a quiet evening at home reminded me that I was still moving forward. Slowly, but surely, I was rebuilding my life. And in the stillness of those moments, I began to understand that perhaps the life I had before, the one with Ethan, wasn't the life I was meant to have after all. What mattered now was this new life I was building with my children. And no matter what came next, I would never stop fighting for them. It had been several weeks since I started rebuilding my life. Slowly, I adjusted to the new rhythm. The mornings were filled with the chaos of preparing the twins for the day, feeding them, and getting them dressed before rushing off to work. Joan had become my anchor, watching over the children while I worked and making sure they were safe, fed, and loved in my absence. Though I still couldn't forget Ethan's betrayal, I had learned to focus on the things that mattered most: my children, my mother, and the life I was building from the ground up. But no matter how much I tried to push the past away, it lingered, like a shadow I couldn't shake. And soon, it wasn't just the past that haunted me, it was the present. Rumors had begun to spread about the twins. At first, I hadn't noticed. But then the whispers became harder to ignore. People's eyes followed me as I walked through the market. Their gazes filled with judgment and curiosity. Conversations stopped when I entered rooms. And I could feel the weight of their questions in the air, hanging around me like a cloud. It started innocently enough, hushed murmurs, sideways glances. Nothing overt. But I could feel it. I could feel the judgment in the air. I thought I could ignore it. But it was harder than I imagined. One afternoon, as I stood at the counter in the neighborhood shop, the shopkeeper hesitated before handing me the change. She looked at me for a long moment, her expression unreadable, before finally speaking. "People are talking. You know," she said in a low voice. They say those children aren't yours. That you took them from somewhere." She glanced around as though making sure no one else was listening. My breath caught in my throat. I felt a wave of panic wash over me, my pulse quickening. "What are you talking about?" I asked, my voice shaking. She shrugged, avoiding my eyes. "I'm just telling you what I've heard. People are wondering how a woman like you could have children like that. You should clear the air before it gets worse." The words felt like a slap to my face. It wasn't just idle gossip anymore. It was a full-blown attack on my identity as a mother. My twins, my precious children, were being questioned in ways I couldn't even comprehend. How could they not see what I saw? They were mine. They were ours. I left the shop in a daze, the shopkeeper's words echoing in my mind. When I reached home, I couldn't shake the feeling that the whispers had taken root, that they were growing and spreading, consuming the way people looked at me. At the school where I worked, I began to notice subtle changes in how people treated me. Parents who had once greeted me warmly now kept their distance. The vendors at the market who had once smiled at me now only offered curt nods. Even my neighbors seemed to be avoiding me, their smiles tight and forced. It was a slow burn, but it was undeniable. The longer I allowed these rumors to linger, the more they began to eat away at my peace. It wasn't just the people around me. I feared what would happen if these whispers reached the ears of the twins. I couldn't bear the thought of them growing up feeling like they didn't belong, feeling the sting of others' judgments. One Sunday, after church, the breaking point came. As we walked out of the building, I overheard two women talking behind me. Their voices were low, but I heard every word clearly. "It's not right," one of them said. "She should tell the truth. A woman like that has no business raising children who clearly aren't hers." My blood ran cold. I turned around, ready to confront them, but they quickly walked away, heads down, avoiding eye contact. My heart pounded in my chest, but I held my ground. Joan, ever the supportive presence, placed a steadying hand on my shoulder as we continued walking. "Let them talk," she said softly. "You know the truth. And that's all that matters." But it wasn't that simple. I couldn't let these rumors take root. They weren't just affecting me, they were affecting my children. I had to act. I couldn't let them grow up in a world where their very existence was questioned by others. That night, after the twins had gone to bed, I sat with Joan at the kitchen table, my mind racing. I needed to do something. I needed to take control of this narrative before it spiraled further. Joan listened quietly as I explained my thoughts. And then, in her quiet, steady way, she offered her support. "You've been silent long enough, Uma," she said, her voice firm. "You can't let people fill in the blanks anymore. You need to tell your story, your truth." It wasn't easy. The next day, I decided to address the rumors directly. I spoke candidly with my co-workers at the school. "I know my children look different," I said, my voice steady despite the knot in my stomach. "But they are mine. And I love them with everything I have. Anyone who doubts that is welcome to ask me directly, instead of whispering behind my back." It was a vulnerable moment. I felt exposed, raw, and in many ways, it felt like I was laying my soul bare for others to judge. But as I spoke, I realized that I wasn't just defending my children, I was reclaiming my power. I had nothing to hide. These were my children, and I would protect them with everything I had. The room fell silent after I spoke. But there was a shift. Some of my colleagues looked at me differently, with understanding, even empathy. And while not everyone responded immediately, there was a subtle change in the way they treated me. The whispers didn't stop overnight. But the power had shifted. I had taken control of my own narrative. And that made all the difference. As the days went on, I noticed small signs of support, a kind word from a neighbor, a smile from a parent at school, a vendor who'd once avoided me now offering a friendly greeting. The change was small, but it was real. And for the first time in weeks, I felt like I had done something right. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was fighting back. I was telling my story. The road ahead would still be hard. I knew that. But at least now, I had a sense of agency. The rumors no longer controlled me. I controlled them. And that was the first step in reclaiming my life. Life, it seemed, had a way of testing me in ways I could never have anticipated. The whispers in the community, the rumors at work, they were just the beginning. No matter how much I tried to regain control, the past seemed determined to haunt me. It wasn't long before I received another package. This time, it wasn't a subtle whisper in the air. It was real, tangible, and frightening. I had just finished putting the twins to bed and was sitting in the living room, trying to unwind after a long day, when the doorbell rang. My heart skipped a beat. I wasn't expecting anyone. When I opened the door, there was no one there. My pulse raced as I scanned the street. But there was no sign of anyone. On the doorstep was a small, intricately wrapped box. No return address. No name. Nothing. I picked it up, feeling a chill crawl up my spine. What was this? Who had sent it? I had been through so much already. And now, this. As I brought the box inside, I hesitated before opening it. The knot in my stomach tightened with every second that passed. The box was delicately wrapped in a deep red ribbon. But there was something cold about the presentation. My fingers trembled as I unwrapped it. And inside, I found a single white card and a folded piece of black paper. I opened the black paper first. My breath caught as I read the words written in bold. Uneven handwriting, "Your happiness is borrowed. Uma. Watch your back. This isn't over." The room felt like it was closing in around me, and I could barely catch my breath. I felt as if the ground had been pulled from beneath me, the air thick with unease. Who would send something like this? And what did it mean? The words were chilling, the threat unmistakable. But there was more. I turned to the white card, and my heart stopped when I saw what was inside. It was a photograph, a candid shot of me and the twins in the park. How had they taken this picture? I hadn't noticed anyone around us that day. Someone had been watching us. The realization sent a jolt of panic through me. I grabbed my phone and called my mother immediately. "Mom," I said, my voice shaking. "Someone is watching us. I just got this package. It's got a threatening message and a picture of me and the twins. I don't know what to do." Joan was silent for a moment before speaking in her calm, reassuring way. "I'll be there soon. Stay inside. Lock the door. I'll bring Ben with me." Ben was our neighbor, a quiet but strong man who worked in security. I'd never asked him for anything. But this was different. I needed help. And he was someone I could trust. Within minutes, Ben arrived. And I explained everything to him, the photo, the threatening note, and the strange feeling of being watched. He listened intently, his brow furrowing in concern. "We need to get to the bottom of this," he said. "Whoever is behind this isn't just trying to intimidate you. This is personal." At that moment, I knew I couldn't deal with this alone. I had been holding everything inside for so long. But now it was clear that the threat wasn't just from rumors or small-minded people. Someone wanted to hurt me and my children. I needed to take action. Ben and Joan immediately started making calls. I was still in a daze. trying to process the events. But Ben's presence grounded me. He was in control, determined to help me find the truth behind these attacks. "We'll figure this out, Uma," he said. "You're not alone in this." The next few days were a whirlwind. Ben and Joan worked tirelessly, tracing down any leads, making phone calls, contacting people they knew who might be able to help. In the midst of all this, I tried to keep things normal for the twins. I couldn't let them sense my fear. Though my own anxiety was mounting with every passing hour, I constantly felt as though someone was watching me, lurking in the shadows, just out of sight. Then, one afternoon, Ben came to me with some news that left me stunned. "I think I know who might be behind this," he said, his voice tense. "I've been looking into some things. It seems like someone hired a private investigator to keep tabs on you. And I think I know who that someone is." My heart skipped a beat. "Who?" Ben hesitated before answering. "It's Ethan." I couldn't believe it. Ethan? How could he be behind this? What did he want? His anger, his rejection, had already caused so much pain. But this was something different. Something far more dangerous. The truth settled over me like a heavy weight. Ethan hadn't just abandoned me, he was trying to destroy me. The twins. Our life together. It was all part of his twisted plan to hurt me further. But now I had no choice but to fight back. With Ben's help. I knew I could. "I won't let him win," I said, my voice filled with determination. "I'm going to protect my children. No matter what it takes." And so, I began to fight back. I wasn't going to let Ethan's cruelty or anyone else's threats tear me down. With Ben's help, I started making plans, reaching out to anyone who could help. I knew the road ahead would be difficult. But I wasn't alone anymore. I had my family. And I had Ben, who was proving to be an unexpected ally in my battle. For the first time in a long while, I felt like I had the strength to fight for myself, for my children, for our future. And I was determined to see this through. The pressure had been mounting for days, the sense of impending danger weighing on me with each passing hour. The note, the picture, the chilling words, they were a constant presence in my mind. An ever-growing storm of fear and confusion. I knew I couldn't just sit back and let it all unfold without trying to get to the bottom of it. The fact that Ethan, the man I once trusted with my whole heart, could be behind this twisted campaign against me was something I couldn't wrap my mind around. But the more Ben and I looked into it, the more the pieces started falling into place. Ben had been relentless in his investigation. He followed every lead, dug into every corner, and uncovered a web of secrets I never could have imagined. It was all connected: Ethan's rage, his abandonment, his pain. It wasn't just about me. It wasn't even just about the twins. No, this was about a much deeper hurt. Something that went beyond our relationship. Something buried in Ethan's past that he couldn't let go of. Ben had managed to track down a few people who knew Ethan from his childhood. People who had seen the effects of the trauma he had suffered growing up in an orphanage. It seemed Ethan's anger wasn't just about the appearance of the twins, it was something far more profound. His father had abandoned him and his mother when Ethan was just a child, leaving him to grow up alone, neglected, and angry. That pain had followed him throughout his life, festering and building, until it found an outlet in his rage toward the children who reminded him of that loss. One evening, as I sat with Ben and Joan, Ben revealed what he had uncovered. Ethan's father was European, he said, his voice steady but filled with the weight of the revelation. And when Ethan's mother was left alone to raise him, she struggled. She did her best. But she couldn't overcome the hurt and the bitterness that came with being abandoned. Ethan grew up in that environment, and it left scars. I felt a coldness seep into my bones as I listened to Ben speak. Ethan's past, his pain, his abandonment had shaped everything about him. Even the way he saw the twins. He couldn't look at them without seeing the reflection of his father's betrayal. He couldn't accept them because their pale skin and blue eyes were a constant reminder of the man who had destroyed his family. The realization hit me like a punch to the stomach. All these years, I had been trying to understand why Ethan had turned his back on us. But I hadn't realized how deep his pain went. Ben continued. I also found something else. Ethan has been keeping an eye on you. He hired a private investigator. Someone who's been following your every move. And I think I know why. My heart skipped a beat. Why? What does he want? I asked. My voice barely a whisper. Ben hesitated. Then answered. He's trying to control the narrative. He wants to destroy you. To make you feel like you're nothing. Like you're unworthy of the life you've built. And he's using the twins as a weapon to do it. They're a symbol of everything he despises, the betrayal of his father. The reminder of what he never had. I couldn't breathe. The weight of it all was too much. Ethan wasn't just trying to hurt me, he was trying to erase everything I had worked so hard to build. My family. My future. My children's happiness, all of it was under threat. And it wasn't just about me. Ethan was battling his own demons. And in the process, he was dragging me and the twins into his hell. Ben's voice broke through my thoughts. Uma, we have to act fast. We need to find him before he does something even worse. The fear I had been carrying for weeks now threatened to consume me. But something shifted inside me. I wasn't going to let Ethan win. He could try to tear me down. He could try to break me. But I wasn't going to let him take my children. My life. My peace. With Ben's help, I began making a plan. I wasn't going to sit back and let Ethan control the situation any longer. I had to take charge. For my children. For myself. Ben and I worked tirelessly over the next few days. Tracing every lead. Gathering every scrap of information that might bring us closer to Ethan. It wasn't easy. There were moments when I felt the weight of the situation crushing me. Moments when I questioned whether I was strong enough to face Ethan and the darkness he brought with him. But then I would look at the twins, their innocent faces. Their trusting eyes, and I knew I had no choice but to keep going. One afternoon, I received a call from Ben. His voice was tight with urgency. Uma, I think we've found him. My heart raced as I grabbed my coat. Where is he? I asked. Barely able to keep my voice steady. There's an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town. Ben replied. I've traced some of his movements there. I think he's hiding out. I didn't hesitate. I couldn't. This was it, the moment I had been preparing for. I had to face him. I had to protect my children. And this time, I was ready. The abandoned warehouse loomed in the distance. Its broken windows and rusted exterior casting eerie shadows under the dim light of the afternoon. It was a place that felt as if it had been forgotten by time itself, a place that now, for me, represented the culmination of everything I had been running from. The threat, the pain, the fear that had haunted me for weeks, it all seemed to lead here. To this place of ruin and darkness. But I couldn't turn back. Not now. Ben had been working tirelessly to trace Ethan's movements. And now, finally, we had found him. There was a part of me that wanted to believe it would be simple, that I could walk in there, face Ethan, and make everything right. But I knew the truth. This wasn't going to be easy. Ethan wasn't the man I had once known. The man who had stood by my side and promised to love me was gone. Replaced by someone consumed by anger, pain, and betrayal. As we approached the warehouse, I could feel my pulse quicken, my chest tightening with every step. Ben had a plan, and he had been meticulous in preparing for this moment. He handed me a small earpiece, telling me to stay close and let him handle the confrontation. He was experienced in these situations, and I trusted him. But I also knew I couldn't just stand by and do nothing. This was my fight. My family. My children. I had to be a part of this. The warehouse was silent as we stepped inside. The air thick with the smell of dust and decay. The only sound was the echo of our footsteps on the cold concrete floor. We moved carefully, quietly, as if not to disturb the stillness that surrounded us. I felt the weight of the moment settle on my shoulders. This wasn't just about confronting Ethan. It was about confronting my own fears, my own sense of powerlessness, and finally taking control of the life that had been torn apart. I glanced over at Ben, who was watching the shadows carefully. He nodded, signaling that we were getting closer. I could feel the tension in the air, the anticipation of the confrontation that was about to unfold. And then, I saw him. Ethan was standing near the back of the warehouse, pacing restlessly, his back to us. His once confident posture was now hunched, defeated. His face, pale and drawn, showed no sign of the man I had once loved. His eyes were empty, consumed by something darker, a rage, a grief that seemed to have swallowed him whole. "Ethan," I called out, my voice steady despite the trembling in my hands. He stopped, frozen in place, his shoulders tensing. Slowly, he turned to face me, his expression a mix of surprise, anger, and something I couldn't quite place. His eyes darted between Ben and me, and for a long moment, there was only silence. "Why are you doing this?" I asked, my voice cracking with the weight of the question. "What do you want from me? From the twins? We've already lost so much. And now you're trying to take everything." Ethan's gaze hardened, and for a moment, I could see the flashes of the man I had once known, the man I had trusted with my heart. But it quickly disappeared, replaced by the anger and hurt that had consumed him for so long. He took a step toward me, his voice low and cold. "They're not mine, Uma," he spat. "Every time I look at them, I see him, the man who abandoned me, who ruined my life. How am I supposed to love them? How could I ever love something that reminds me of everything I've been through?" I felt a shiver run down my spine as his words landed. It wasn't about the twins. It was about the unresolved pain from his past. The betrayal he felt from his father had shaped everything about him. And now, it was poisoning his relationship with his own children. "I know what it's like to carry pain, Ethan," I said, my voice softening. "I know what it's like to be judged, to feel abandoned. But these children, our children, they didn't do anything wrong. They are innocent. You can't punish them for something that isn't their fault." Ethan's shoulders slumped, and for a moment, I saw the flicker of vulnerability in his eyes. But then he quickly shook his head, his fists clenched at his sides. "I can't do this, Uma," he whispered, his voice breaking. "I can't love them. I can't love what reminds me of him." The air felt heavy with his pain. It was as if I could feel it too, the weight of all the years of anger, of abandonment, of rejection. It was too much for him to bear. And yet, he was willing to let it destroy everything he had left. I stepped forward, my heart aching for him, for the man he had become, and for the man he could have been. "Then let them go, Ethan," I said softly. "If you can't love them, don't hurt them. They deserve a chance to grow up, to be happy, to be loved. They deserve that much." For a long moment, there was silence between us, thick with the tension of everything unsaid. The twins' cries echoed in my mind, their innocent faces haunting me, reminding me of everything I had to protect. And then, slowly, Ethan lowered his hands, his body sagging with defeat. "Take them," he muttered, his voice barely audible. "Just, take them and go. I can't do this anymore." The words were a broken surrender. And though I knew the fight wasn't over, I knew in that moment that I had won. The twins were safe. And somehow, Ethan had taken the first step toward letting go of the pain that had held him captive for so long. As I rushed to my children, pulling them into my arms, their cries of relief filled the space between us. And I knew that for the first time in a long while, we were free. The air outside the warehouse felt different, lighter, as if the weight that had been pressing down on me for so long had finally lifted. I held the twins close to me, their tiny bodies nestled against mine as their soft, relieved cries filled the quiet night. For a moment, It seemed like time stood still. I could hardly believe that we had made it through the worst of it. Ethan had let us go. The twins were safe. And despite everything, I felt a flicker of hope rising within me. Ben and I exchanged a look. And for the first time in what felt like forever, I felt a sense of calm. The danger wasn't over, I knew that. But for now, we had won. We had taken control of our lives again. And I was determined to never let that control slip away. As I stepped away from the warehouse with the twins in my arms, I felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude for Ben. He had been there for me every step of the way, providing not only the practical support I needed but the emotional strength I had so desperately lacked. I knew that without him, I might have lost myself entirely in the chaos. The drive back home was long, but the silence in the car wasn't oppressive. The twins had fallen asleep, exhausted from the stress of the past few days. As I glanced out the window, my mind raced. I knew I couldn't let Ethan's actions define me anymore. The years I spent with him, the love I thought we shared, those memories could not overshadow the life I was building now. A life with my children. A life that was full of love, resilience, and hope. When we arrived home, I carried the twins into the house, my heart swelling with love as I looked at them. They were finally safe. The threat was behind us. But I still had so much to process. The hurt from Ethan's betrayal, the fear I had carried for so long, and the uncertainty of what came next. But there was one thing I knew for certain: I wasn't alone anymore. I had Ben. And I had my mother. Together, we could rebuild. Joan had been anxiously waiting for us, her eyes full of concern as she opened the door. When she saw the twins, safe and sound in my arms, her face softened with relief. But it wasn't just relief for the twins' safety. It was relief for me, too. I had made it through. I had faced the unimaginable and survived. Joan pulled me into a tight hug. You did it. Uma. You did it. I clung to her, the tears that had been held back for so long finally spilling over. I don't know how I did it, Mom. I don't know how I made it through. You didn't make it through alone. Joan said softly. You had us. You had Ben. And now, we have each other. The next few days were a blur of emotions. As the twins slowly adjusted to the safety of home, I found myself taking stock of everything I had been through. The betrayal, the fear, the threats, they had left scars. Yes. But they had also made me stronger. I had learned things about myself that I never could have imagined. I had learned that love was not just about being with someone else. Love was about protecting the ones you care for, even when the world seemed determined to tear you apart. As I sat in the living room one evening, the twins peacefully sleeping in their cribs, I found myself reflecting on everything that had happened. I thought about Ethan and the years we had spent together. I thought about the man he had become and the pain he had carried with him for so long. I didn't know what would happen with him in the future. I didn't know if he would ever be able to heal. But what mattered now was that I was healing. I was moving forward. Ben had been my pillar of support throughout all of this. But I knew that I couldn't rely on him forever. I had to stand on my own 2 feet. I had to prove to myself that I could build the life I wanted. Even without Ethan, I was the one who had carried these children into the world. I was the one who had nurtured them, protected them, and loved them. And I would continue to do so, no matter what. In the days that followed, I began to make small changes. I started working again, picking up more hours at the school. And although it was exhausting, it gave me a sense of purpose. I was contributing to my family, and I was showing my children that no matter what life threw at us, we could face it together. But there was more to be done. I knew that the rumors that had followed me for so long weren't completely gone. I couldn't erase the past, but I could control how I let it affect me. I wasn't going to let the judgment of others define my family or my future. One afternoon, after the twins had gone down for their nap, I sat down with Ben and Joan in the living room, my heart full of gratitude. They had been there for me in ways I could never fully express. Without their love and support, I wouldn't have made it through. "We're going to be okay," I said, my voice filled with quiet certainty. "I don't know what the future holds, but we're going to be okay." Ben smiled, his eyes full of warmth. "You're stronger than you think, Uma. And now, you have a family that will always have your back." The weight of everything I had been through slowly began to lift. It wasn't gone. Not completely. But I had found a sense of peace. A sense of purpose. I was moving forward. One step at a time. And nothing, no one, could take that away from me. I would rebuild my life. For me. For my children. And for the future we would create together. Weeks passed. And with each day, life seemed to find a new rhythm. The tension that had once consumed my every thought slowly began to dissipate, replaced by a quiet sense of peace. The twins, though still adjusting to everything that had happened, were thriving. They had started to laugh again, their small giggles filling the house with joy. They were growing, learning, and finding comfort in the familiarity of our home. Joan, as always, was there. A steady presence in the chaos of motherhood. I couldn't have asked for a better support system. But as much as I wanted to move on, there was one thing that I couldn't shake: Ethan. The thought of him lingered in my mind, like a shadow I couldn't outrun. What had become of him? Was he still consumed by anger? Had he found any peace in the wake of everything that had happened? I didn't have the answers. And I wasn't sure I wanted to. I had made my peace with the fact that he wasn't part of our lives anymore. The twins didn't need him. And neither did I. We were moving forward. Building a new life. That was enough. But life, it seemed, had other plans. It was one Sunday morning when the doorbell rang again. An unexpected sound that shattered the quiet of the house. I wasn't expecting anyone. And for a moment, I froze. My mind raced as I wondered who it could be. Ben? Joan? Or was it someone with bad news? When I opened the door, I wasn't prepared for what I saw. Standing on the other side was Ethan. His face was thinner, more gaunt than I remembered. His eyes hollow and tired. He stood there, his shoulders slumped, as if carrying the weight of the world on his back. I didn't know what to feel at that moment. Anger, fear, relief. It was a mixture of everything. Each emotion tangled together in a knot that was too complex to untangle. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. It felt as if the years between us, the pain, the betrayal, the love, all of it hung in the air like a thick fog. Finally, Ethan spoke, his voice raw and unsteady. I need to talk to you," he said, his eyes not meeting mine. "I know I've done unforgivable things. But I've changed. I've been trying to make sense of everything of what I did to you. To the twins." The words were foreign, like a faint echo of the man I once knew. How could he stand there now, asking for forgiveness? After everything he had done, after the pain he had caused, after abandoning me and the children in the most heart-wrenching way possible. "I don't know if I can forgive you, Ethan," I said, my voice trembling but firm. "What you did, it shattered everything. You can't just come back and expect everything to be okay. It's not that simple." Ethan's face twisted in agony. "I know. I don't expect you to forgive me just like that. I'm not asking for that. I just want a chance to make things right. To try to be a better person. For you. For them." The mention of the twins made my heart ache. I looked over my shoulder at the quiet house. The peaceful hum of the twins' nap time filling the air. They were inside. Safe. Far removed from the mess that had unfolded months ago. They didn't need to hear this. They didn't need to see the man who had once been their father now standing in front of me, broken and asking for another chance. "Ethan," I said, my voice softer now, though still filled with caution. "The twins are my world. They don't know the man you were. They only know the man you choose to be now. And I can't just let you waltz back into our lives. Not without proving to me and to them that you're really changed. He nodded, his eyes glistening with something I couldn't quite identify. It wasn't just guilt. It was a raw, almost desperate plea for redemption. I understand. I'm willing to do whatever it takes. I didn't trust him. I couldn't. The damage had been done, and it ran too deep for a simple apology to fix. But as I looked at him, standing there before me, I couldn't completely shut the door. Maybe that was my own weakness, the part of me that still wanted to believe in the man I had once loved. The part of me that hoped people could change, even when everything about the past said they couldn't. For the next few days, I wrestled with the decision. I didn't want to make the wrong choice. I didn't want to expose my children to more pain, to more confusion. But I also didn't want to be the one to close the door on a potential chance for healing. For redemption, not just for Ethan, but for myself too. Finally, after much thought, I made a decision. If Ethan was truly committed to change, he would have to prove it. Slowly, cautiously, I would let him back into our lives. But only on my terms. The road ahead wasn't going to be easy. I knew that. But with the support of Joan and Ben, I was ready to face whatever came next. The past could not be erased, but it didn't have to define us. We were moving forward, and that was all that mattered. As time passed, Ethan began to prove that change was possible. Slowly but surely, he worked to rebuild his relationship with the twins, earning their trust in small but meaningful ways. The healing was slow, and the scars of the past would never fully fade. But we were moving forward. Together, we learned that forgiveness wasn't about forgetting the pain, it was about finding peace and building a future. No matter how difficult the journey, the love and strength of my family, Joan, Ben, and the twins were the foundation of my new life. I had fought for my children, for myself, and I would continue to do so with every ounce of strength I had. Thank you for following this incredible journey. If you've been moved by Uma's story, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more life stories. Stay tuned for more heartfelt stories of resilience and hope.